And I am very pleased to welcome Reena Lazar, who we have a very special treat today because Reena has a very extensive program, The Seven Tools for Making Sense of Life and Death. And what she's going to do today is give us a glimpse at that. And I know we're going to walk away with some great insights and perspective on. Um, Something that we all need to deal with as much as we try to delay it, and that is making sense of life and death. And so, Reena, I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time since we set this up.
Me too.
Um, Most of our audience, although it's growing, is in the Mid Atlantic, where I'm located. But I, I'm always pleased when we get a presenter from a foreign country. No, uh, you're tell everybody where
Sure.
you're calling in from.
Yeah, so I am in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So
All
for
right.
those
Good
of you who don't
morning.
know where that is, it's just north of Seattle.
Yeah. So good morning to you.
Good
And
morning.
before we dive into your seven tools for making sense of life and death, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
and then we'll jump into the discussion.
Great. Yeah, and so I'm the co-founding partner of my company, company, which is called Willow End of Life Education and Planning. And we provide heart-centered and inquiry-based tools and other opportunities like workshops for people like you to plan for that inevitable death and to explore the reality of your mortality. So I am going to tell you how I got into this work and a little bit more about Willow as we go along, or actually more towards the end, but because I just want to just jump right in.
I love it. This is great.
Okay,
So I'm going to drop off the screen here to give you more screen room. Um, Feel free to shout out my name if you need me for anything. And
I
then
will.
just a reminder to the audience, feel free to use chat, Q&A, raise your hand if there's something that you would like Rena to elaborate
Great. Thanks
more
so
on.
much.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm so delighted to be here today to facilitate this gathering. And what I'm going to be doing is giving you a taste of exercises that are found both in our workbook, Seven Tools for Making Sense of Life and Death. This is a very worn version of it. And also on our free online course with the same name, Seven Tools for Making Sense of Life and Death. So I'm going to give you a taste of it with the hope that you're going to be so intrigued that you're just going to go and start doing it. So normally I present in a very interactive way where I have breakout groups and pair shares and things like that. But because this is a webinar, we're going to rely on chat quite a bit on the chat box. And hopefully I'll have some interesting interactions with Steve as well. So let's jump right in. But first, before anything, I just have a fun fact that you may or may not know. And that is, did you know that human beings are the only animals on the planet that actually know we're going to die? It's just something I came across some years ago, and I thought that was fascinating. And I mean, it's kind of what makes us conscious human beings. And it's the one thing we're 100% certain of, where there's no doubt in our mind that we are going to die one day. But most people would do everything in their power to avoid thinking about it, to avoid talking about it, and let alone preparing for it. So, Steve, can you launch the first poll? I just have a quick question to ask you, and it's about planning documents. And so essentially what I want to know from people who are here is whether you have any end of life planning documents in place. And that could be things like advanced care, advanced directives, even a legal will, proxy agreements, all that kind of stuff. So if you have it in place, you have everything in place, that's the third answer. If you have some of the documents in place, that's the second answer. And of course, if you have nothing current or relevant in place, maybe you did it 20 years ago, but it's irrelevant, then that's the first answer. So when
Okay. So looks like we've got a pretty decent response here. Well, there are a few more coming in. Um, okay. Let me end that poll and I'm going to share the results for everybody.
Great, thank you so much. So it's so interesting. I mean, this is a crowd, obviously, that's more engaged than most. And it's great that a lot of you, almost half of you have some, or more than half of you, almost all of you have some or all of your documents in place, and only 15, just under 15% have nothing in place. And of course, the reality is that you can stop sharing, or do I just do that?
There.
Yeah. And the reality is that most people like, let's say North America, because Canada and the US are pretty similar, and it's probably similar in other parts of the world as well, don't have, and most adults don't have any documents in place. And so we at Willow, me and we at Willow, we think we have an idea why. So first of all, might be obvious to you guys, but most people don't even like talking about death. We live in a death phobic and death denying society, and death is still a very taboo topic. So that's a big part of the problem. If you don't even want to think about or talk about death, then you're not going to go and get those documents in place. But I also think that it's because those conventional questionnaires and forms and public education efforts are just not working for a lot of people. And a reason that people don't go and fill out those forms, even if someone handed them to them, is because they just don't know what to say. So our belief is that we need to do some foundational work first that will guide us to explore the reality of our mortality. And only then will we be motivated and even equipped to make plans that reflect our values and reflect our priorities. So what we're going to do in this workshop, I'm going to share the screen. Give me a second here. There we go. What we're going to do in this workshop is we're going to get present to your hopes and your fears around your inevitable death. You're going to articulate your core values and how they impact both your living and your dying. And throughout, you're going to learn how your mortality is actually an opportunity in disguise. And at the end, we'll just see how you're feeling about all that. So I'm going to start with a short guided practice to get you grounded and centered in the reality that we don't know when or how we're going to die. So this is like, you might call it a guided meditation or something like that, but it's very short. And if you've never done this thing before, just go with it. So I'm just going to ask you to find a comfortable position. You could be exactly where you're sitting or standing or whatever, either on your chair or wherever it is, or couch. And if you can, I invite you to sit up straight, and you can either do that by coming to the front of your chair or just sitting on a cushion if you're cross-legged on the floor, wherever you are, but try to sit up straight. And begin by feeling the awareness of your bum, buttocks, whatever you like to call it, on the chair or the pillow. Just feel, just feel that contact. And then take a few slow, deep breaths. And Steve, I hope you're doing this too. All the way into your abdomen, your tummy. And as you exhale, just try to let go of any thoughts or agendas that might be occupying your mind. So if you notice there's thoughts, just let them go. So take a few slow breaths. I'll just be quiet for a second. And the first step in letting go of thoughts is to just notice them. You might notice a thought that says, "What thoughts?" Anyway, so notice thoughts and just say goodbye, see you later. And still with the slow, deep breaths, I'm inviting you to bring a fresh awareness of being present in this moment and just what's happening right now in your body. Just notice what's happening in your body. If your shoulders are tense, relax them. If your jaw's tense, relax that. You're hot, you're cold. And just let your breathing become relaxed and at your natural pace. Notice the breath coming in through your nose, through your chest, into your abdomen, and then back up to your chest and out your nose. Now, while continuing to focus on breathing, I invite you to bring kind awareness to the fact that everything and everyone has to die. Everything and everyone has to die. And there are many ways to die. You may die as a result of an illness. You may die in an accident at home or in a vehicle or while adventuring or traveling. Quite often, death is anticipated, and other times it's completely unexpected or unannounced. Just consider that we just don't know when or how we're going to die. Suppose you knew that you're dying right now and that you had less than a year to live. I invite you to truly believe this just for a moment, just for this exercise, and bring this information deep into your heart. You only have a year to live. And just stay with that thought for about 2 breaths. Now, maybe you've been thinking more about your reality, your mortality, as you lived through this thing, this global pandemic we're kind of still living through, or the glowing climate emergency, or the spotlight on historic and ongoing systemic racial injustice that plagues our world. And maybe if you're Black or Indigenous or another racialized person, the reality of your mortality has always been front and center for you. But however you identify yourself, I invite you to stay present to the fact that someday, one day, your life as you know it will end. Now, we're going to explore together your hopes and your fears around your inevitable death, and we're going to start with fears. So when you think about your inevitable death, you could be thinking about the time leading up to your death, the moment of death, or what will happen after you die. And that could be either to you or to the people you leave behind. So my question is, what top of mind fears or concerns come to mind? So just in your mind, what are the top of mind fears and concerns come to mind when you think about these different parts of your dying process? And when you're ready, open your eyes, or if they were closed, and I invite you to share any words or short phrases that came to mind by writing them in the chat box. So when you're ready, just write those words and phrases. And Steve, you can do this too, or you can let us know out loud if you have any top of mind fears or concerns about your death.
I had to wake up.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Jeanette says pain and suffering. Jeannie says alone. Dixie says being the victim of a medical industrial complex. Monique says pain at the time of death. Marcy says fear. I yeah, I murder. Marcia says murder. Ken Silverstein scared of no longer existing. Um, yeah, I think my thing. Whenever I think about death, I always hope I can just go to sleep and I just don't wake up in the morning. That I don't have a prolonged uh, illness or painful uh, element of prolonged pain. Marcy says leaving my loved ones. Anna says, "Who will take care of my adult son who suffers with depression?" Yeah, good, very good comment there. Sue, having everything in place now. Edmund's family. Uh, Imogene says, "I have told everyone what I want them to know." Oh yeah, boy, these are some really great comments and
Mhm.
some things that I guess they're all important to me, but I haven't really crossed my mind. So thanks everybody for sharing. Um, Being decrepit, missing new knowledge in medicine, science, etc. Um,
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for the comments, and you can keep them coming. And we're going to switch though also to hopes and fears before I make some more comments about your comments. So hopes and fears, again, I won't walk you through a long process, but I do invite you to take a few breaths, close your eyes or lower your gaze if you have to, if you want to just whatever you have to do to get yourself centered again. And when you think of your inevitable death, whether it be the time leading up to your death, the moment of death, or what will happen to you after you die, either to you or to your loved ones, what hopes and desires do you have about your end of life? So what hopes and desires? So let them pop into your mind. And then when you're ready, you can pop them into the chat. Hopes and desires. I was supposed to share. Never
yep.
mind. I
Let's
missed sharing.
see. Yep. Marcia says that someone will mourn for me.
Mm,
Um, I know. I'm concerned for my children. I guess is
yeah.
that everything goes well for them. John Laster. Oh wow, name I haven't seen in a long time. A pre-death funeral.
Yeah, sometimes that's called a living funeral. Yeah, or a living wake.
Rosalind says prepped as well as possible for, for heirs. Um,
Hmm.
and let's see that my family can comfortably navigate all the processes for the actual funeral as well as the bills and needs for the future. that the world is a better place. Dixie says um, that I will be missed. Jeanette says, boy, great. Ken says, die peacefully, and that my family is able to mourn but go on living. Um,
Beautiful. Also great.
that it's peaceful, that eternal life with God, um, that's peaceful in my family. Yep.
And these are great. Oh, this one more. Oh, no. Yeah, those that leave behind know my wishes and everything is in place to deal with the details. Yeah. So put grandniece. Uh, I didn't. Oh, yeah, in medical school. Oh, I see. Put your grandniece in medical school. That's great. So keep them coming. And I just want you. I should just share mine. So my fear, my biggest fear is that I would die before my daughter's, old enough to take care of herself. She's almost there, but that she's really ready. But she may never be ready. And then, of course, one of my hopes is that I'm ready. That I feel, I mean, in many ways, I feel ready, and that I would like to die lucid, knowing that I'm dying, but you don't know yet if I'll have control over that. So I just want you to notice that some of those hopes and fears that you all put down are completely out of our control. Some are, we just don't know. But for many of them, there are things we can do to either mitigate the fears or, precipitate the hopes. So, for example, you can get your affairs in order. You can have those important conversations with people and make sure they know, they know what's on your mind about them. And we actually have a free tool in our shop that's called the 5 Minutes Legacy Love Letter. That's really that fits that exactly. You can address unfinished business. You can attend to your bucket list or whatever you need to do to feel like your life is fulfilled, that you feel ready to die. And there's more, of course. So now I invite you to reflect on this exercise and jot down for yourself, if you have a pen and paper, any answers to the questions I'm about to share with you on the screen. So the questions are, with our workbook and with our online program, we do a lot of reflection because it's about really being conscious of the fact that we are mortal beings. So my question is, what was it like to articulate your hopes and fears? What was it like to learn about other people's hopes and fears? And Steve already alluded to that. Like when you see others, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't know I had that fear. Great, now I'm more fearful. No, I'm just kidding. But it is true. Like it gives you some awareness of things that you might not have thought of. And what actions can you take to address your hopes and fears? So again, I invite you, well, I'll give you a minute to just, if you have a pen and paper, to just jot that down for yourself. And maybe while you're jotting that down, Steve, what do you think about these questions?
I was dropping in the thing off your thing. Okay, so what do you like to what is it like to articulate your hopes and fears? I think that when you start talking about your inevitable death, it makes it more real. Um, and I always get an awareness of how even though I'm in this business and I've been part of discussions similar to this, at how much I choose to ignore the fact that I'm going to die someday. And so it's great to verbalize it.
Mhm,
What's it's like? I think this was the best thing about this discussion is what's it like to learn about other people's hopes and
mhm,
fears. Is that just hearing that we're all in the same boat and hearing different perspectives. And I love the person who brought up having a funeral before you die. I mean, that's great. And what actions can you take to address your hopes and fears? I think being brave enough to talk about it, and because the more that we talk about it, the more normal it becomes. And amongst my friends, sometimes you're at a barbecue and the topic turns to death and dying, and everybody's kind of apologetic at first, but then you really get to know people better, and
yeah.
it's a very deep conversation.
Totally, totally. So yeah, if those are, it's great. And if anybody has anything to add to that, please feel free to put that in the chat box. Any of the questions, it could be one, it could be two, it could be three. What actions can you take to address? What is it like to learn about other people's hopes and fears? What's it like to articulate your hopes and fears? And Steve, you're absolutely right. Like, death is a very taboo topic in our society in general, maybe not so much on this crowd, But my experience has always been, and I'm going to talk about this more later, that when people do start thinking about their end of life, and this is such a simple exercise, what are your hopes, what are your fears, it actually gives them a great sense of peace, and it even uh, inspiration. It sort of charges people up. It energizes people, and it takes a weight off. So if anybody else wants to add anything about any of these questions or just the impact of doing this exercise, please feel free to do so in the chat. Do you think I can remove the slide or? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the slide and.
Let's see. Dixie
Okay.
says shared fears are divided, shared hopes are multiplied. Really nice. Joe says before the peace comes fear, then acceptance. And Samantha says anyone else getting major static? It sounds okay on my end, but that's a very good question, Samantha. In this digital world, I hope that I hope. Well, I don't like the fact that you're getting static, and I hope everybody else is static free. Sue says the need to have these thoughts and conversations with those involved and plan for it. It's a relief.
Mm-hmm.
And Patricia says no static here. So Samantha, play around. You can sometimes log in and log out again, and that may get rid of it. Okay.
All right, so how are you guys feeling right now? Some of you have already mentioned it, but you can either just think about it to yourself or pop that one word in the chat. Like, how are you feeling right now? You know, and if you have any thoughts or what, this is, you don't have to answer all these questions. You can just answer how you're feeling right now. But the whole point of this is to do this consciously, to really like notice what's going on for you. So, and there's another long comment there about die after affair is completed, acting on major fears proactively when finished well enough, return to missed passion. Yes. Hope, have enough time. This is very stressful. Each accomplishment feels marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's Rosalind, your statement there that this is stressful. I think that's what I was trying to articulate is that I think these discussions around death, always start out somewhat stressful for me too. And but now that we're talking about this as a group, it's as Joe says, I'm at acceptance. It's um, and Anna says I'm at ease with myself. Talking about death is my happy place. It helps me claim life more. Man, see, like just hearing a statement like that is just so empowering because I would have never articulated that, but it's absolutely true, Dixie.
And exactly, and that's exactly what I mean when we say your mortality is an opportunity in disguise. And we're going to be talking more and more about how, exploring your mortality is a portal to living and loving fully. That's basically the theme here. So thank you all for those comments. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And I just want to put this into a little bit of context, because basically I want to congratulate you because what you just did is a piece of foundational work for your end of life planning. That's like one piece, talking about your hopes and fears. So I'm going to show, whoops, I forgot to forward it once. Okay. I am going to show you the reality of our mortality planning checklist. And that is this. And when I show it to you, don't worry, you're not expected to be able to read these small prints, but this is another free tool that exists in our shop. willoweol.com/store, it's called, has 5 free tools for you. And this is one of them. So like I said, you're not expected to read this, but I just wanted to show you that we have this planning checklist that we call very holistic. And it has 3 categories, and that's foundation, making choices, and clearing the way. And I'm going to zoom in a minute, but well, I'll zoom in now. So the foundation category, which is what we're doing today, and we're doing really just this first part, making sense of life and death, is where you explore your values, hopes, fears, and beliefs around your end of life, your death, and your dying. And around your life, your death, and your dying. So, why do we do this? So we do this because I believe that making sense of life and death prior to making practical arrangements, it helps ensure that your end of life planning actually reflects your values and your priorities. And ensuring that your values and priorities are identified and expressed in your planning is super, super key. Well, it might be obvious, but it's obvious because like if you don't do that, first you're either going to get stuck, or you're not even going to start. You're going to get stuck, so you don't finish it, or you're just not even going to start because you don't even know what to say. But you'll also be at risk of making choices that just aren't right for you. I don't know if any of you can relate to having some documents that just aren't quite right for you because you did them, before you thought about, before you knew yourself well, or you did them in a hurry or something. So what we're going to do from here is dive into our values. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And I'd love it, Steve, if you could launch the second poll, which asks the question. Basically, it's a very simple yes, no question. If someone were to ask you to tell them what your values are, like, hey, Steve, what are your values? Would you even know how to answer that? And it's just yes or no. Yes, I know. I definitely know, and no, I wouldn't know how to answer it. Like, I would be able to say, here's what my values. They are and but. Okay, I'm just going to wait for everyone to answer.
Yeah. Usually once we get to, all right, I think we're over half of the audience. So here I'll post this.
Okay, some of you might have had a chance to answer, but it's just, you get the
Yeah.
idea. So quite a few of you said yes, which is awesome. And some of you said no. And I don't know, the people haven't answered yet what they were going to say, but probably wouldn't change that much. And so that's awesome. And I have found that most people don't know what their values are. So I'm going to we're going to do an exercise to articulate your core values. And if you do know what your values are, maybe this will, refine them somewhat. So as you know, consciously or unconsciously, we live according to a particular set of values, or you could call them principles, or you could say a standard of behavior. And even though we live by them, most people don't make a habit of knowing or articulating what they are. So in this exercise, I'm going to guide you to articulate your core values. And the first step is to just take a piece of paper or find another place on your device and go ahead and write down the values that you would say guide your life. So, 3 to 5 words. These are the values that guide my life. I'm going to give you like 20 seconds. I think that's about 20 seconds. And now if you didn't get it, if you didn't know what to write, or you're not sure what to write, like, don't sweat it, because we're going to spend some more time with this in a moment, and I'm going to share some tools that will help you. So I hope you're playing along, just writing down your values, because I'm going to ask you to reflect on it later. So I'm going to show you another screen, and this screen has lots of words on it. And these are a whole bunch of values. There's about 114 or so, but I don't know if we keep adding, so I'm not sure. So now I'm inviting you to take a few minutes and look at the words on this screen and make a note of any values on this list that you would either like to add to the ones on your list, or that you'd like to add, or maybe swap for some of the words on your list. So I'm going to give you, now we need a good 2 minutes, I think, to do this, because it's quite a bit. I'm even going to put my timer on. And I hope you guys can manage the silence, but this takes some concentration. So these are just adding words or swapping words for the ones you already chose. So another minute. About another 30 seconds. Oh, there you go. So that's the end of that. Stop. And you might be finished or you might not be finished. I'll leave the slide here for you. And what the next task is to take your list of words now, and it might be more than 5 at this point, because you maybe were inspired by quite a few of these, and try to refine it or cull it down to just 3 to 5 words. So to help you reduce the number, look for words that are close in meaning, or maybe even redundant, and choose one. And eliminate all the words except for the ones that are sort of that really call to you, the most accurately you. You might also look for words that kind of override other words. For example, sometimes like kindness and compassion. So are you kind because of your compassion? Or are you compassionate because of your kindness? Which one is the foundational one, or which one speaks to you more? So you could eliminate that way. So how about another another minute to get your list down to 3 to 5 words. Yes, Rosalind says key is to combine superb values into small subsets. Yes, exactly. Another 30 seconds. So I'm going to try to shorten your list. All right, we're just stopping now. And so hopefully you have a list, a short list of, and I'm going to call it a first draft, because of course this is something you can return to over and over again. If you're comfortable, I'd love to give you an opportunity to share with others. So I'm going to just go to the next slide here. Oh, no, not yet. Sorry, we're not there yet. I'm not going to go to the next slide. So my invitation is, I'm just going to stop sharing, is to share your 3 to 5 values that came up with. And because it's always interesting to see what other people put in
Yeah,
there.
this was a good process, and what was interesting with me is that when you just said what are your values, I, it was terms that weren't even close to what was on the list, but once I saw your list of um, suggestions, that really helped me kind of formulate it. So I whittled it down to 4: self-awareness, community growth, and empathy. Um, I had to look at that list and sort of say, okay, what do I aspire to, and what are really my values? Because I think I aspire to everything on that list. Patricia, kindness, family, acceptance. Samantha, empathy, loyalty, love, and kindness. Uh, Reena, love, purpose, and connection. Joe, authenticity, empathy, compassion, and truthfulness. Anna, family, honesty, and kindness. Marcy, family, kindness, gratitude, and learning. This is also another reason that I love. This is a great exercise, and one of the reasons why I like calling this the positive aging community, because when you read these values, you understand why these discussions are such a wonderful place to connect with other people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
Edmund, faith, family, integrity, kindness. Marcia, compassion, autonomy, collaboration, humor, resourcefulness. Rosalind, honorable behavior includes all of these ideas. Very good point.
It's so fun to see what everyone writes.
Yeah.
And then you think, yeah. And of course, you want to have a dozen of them, but and you can.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great exercise.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. So this is, since we're talking about making sense of life and death, I'd love for you to look at these questions and think about how you imagine applying those values to your end of life planning. And essentially, in general, what's the value of naming your values? So think about that for a minute. If you have an answer to it, please put it in the chat. And Steve, if you have an answer to that, how do you imagine applying your values to your end of life planning?
Wow. Okay, you stumped me on this one. I have not given this much thought,
What,
but um,
I
I
mean, I can tell you what how I can jump in if you want. If you
yeah, no, I'd be curious how you would answer that
Yeah,
question.
you know, this is a great question that we've had so many interesting answers this question, but I'll just speak a little bit for me. You know, what was my values? Love, purpose, and was it connection? So for sure, when it comes to my end of life planning, I would like a very participatory and inclusive sort of, let's call it end of life ritual. So I call it a funeral. People have different names for it, but I want my community members to be involved, my family to be involved in a way. And hopefully we'll all, I mean, I've already have had some discussions about that, and I'll continue to have discussions about that. There was a great example. This woman who is an elder, still alive and well, but this was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, was telling us, Michelle and I, that her plan, not her plan, she had already started doing it. She's already decided who's going to be her pallbearers. She wasn't ill or, you know, close to death. And, but what was very important to her is that she invites them in person. This is before COVID, that she invites them. Imagine somebody saying to you way before, you know that way before they still have decades to live or whatever, say, you know, when I die, I would really like for you to be one of my pallbearers. How does that change your relationship with that person? You know, it's beautiful. And another woman I'm thinking of, who one of her values was community. So actually, it went the other way, because one of our expressions is that all that matters in the end matters now. And this exercise is kind of like all that matters now matters at the end. But this is a woman who values community, and she realized she wanted to have a funeral that, you know, had a lot of people, and she realized she doesn't have a big community. So she decided she's going to change her life and start living in a sort of more of a co-housing situation, a communal kind of living, because she realized that was missing from her life. Anyway, there are lots more examples, but I'd love to see what some of you shared in this.
Okay, yeah, and you know, this is you you brought up a lot of our discussions that we have here are around advanced directives and things of
Mhm,
that nature. And
mhm,
so uh, it's interesting when you brought up the idea of being a pallbearer
mhm.
versus I would like you to be my healthcare power of attorney.
Well,
Like
that's true too. I mean, that's
there's one carries they both carry a tremendous amount of responsibility and honor, but
one
one
literally does it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So um okay, let's see here. Preparing so that my family can enjoy the end of life experience with kindness and acceptance.
Yes.
Perspective allows one to change opinions as appropriate, to change course in life, to discard bigotry and become more empathetically inclusive, to alter one's behavior and attitudes. These are some great statements. Dixie it says, if service and purposefulness is a high value for me, as it was for my mother, then death is more welcomed when those in life experiences are lost. But beautiful statement there, Dixie.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And you know, if you haven't shared, my invitation is that you, well, I mean, if you end up signing up to the online program, you'll get a chance to do all these exercises for yourself. But even if you don't, like right afterwards, like go in and put some more thought into this. Write it down, journal, talk to someone in your household and someone on the phone, because these conversations, well, both just the contemplation of this material and the conversations of this material really have an impact on the way you live. And but before I get more into that, let me just, like I said, I always like people to reflect on what this exercise was like for you. So again, how are you feeling right now? Do you have any thoughts or any observations that you want to share? Please feel free to put that in the chat. I know that I've done this exercise so many times, and every time I do it, I'm just reminded of the preciousness of life and you know, those are the values I want to live by, not the ones that sometimes creep into my mind, like I'm tired or I'm, complaining or this or that. So it's really,
Well, you,
yeah.
you know, one thing that Margie states here that I like about this exercise, like I said, end of life, advanced directives, all these things are, very common topics on these discussions. And Margie says, I talked to my daughter about end of life planning. We got it, and we have different desires. It's going to take some work to reconcile. What I
Mm,
like about this exercise that you just walked us through is that you could have a discussion with your loved ones don't call it, we're all here at an end of life seminar, but it's just, hey son, have you ever thought about what your values are? Let me
hmm.
explain to you what I've given some thought to this, and these are my values. You could see where you could have a very productive conversation around that could lead into advanced directives and things of that
That's
nature.
that's ex
um
it's exactly what the purpose of this, and we call it foundational end of life planning work, and it's universal, and it's so wonderful to do this either with someone like in a someone in your family. I guess it'd be a beautiful thing to do with your daughter,
mhm.
or even to do it with a stranger, and because you're going to get to know them real quick, like
Yeah, no, I
you know,
agree.
yeah,
But I think because we at the onset of this seminar, which we all signed up for, and we know we're talking about end of life, um, I'm really into Trojan horses when it comes to aging topics, where if we can disguise a conversation that's about death, dying, aging, disability, what have you, and not let people know that that's where we're going,
yeah,
because once they sort of get a whiff of death or aging, boy, the barriers start to go up. I'm not ready to have a conversation
yeah.
like that yet.
Yeah. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I just want to comment on what John said, because I was going to say something about that, because that's often what people come up with when they do this exercise. It's like stuck between the values that I exemplify and the ones I would like to exemplify. It's a very, very great observation, because sometimes we put those values down and there's like, yeah, I want to be like my business partner. She said she used to put down curiosity, but she realized, no, she's not actually a very curious person, but she'd like to be. So if you can discern between those values that are guiding you or that you would like to guide you, that also isn't a great, it's just a great exercise to do, to just notice that, right? And then contemplate, ponder on that. Okay. And hopefully you see it as an opportunity, and that you'll get to when you're ready.
Hmm. Yeah. No, this is a great.
And sharing your values with the next generation. Yeah. Um, there's a lot of great comments. Do I read them all, or we just let
Oh,
it?
I think, yeah, we can, yeah. Well, I'm looking at the clock. We're almost to the top of the hour,
Yeah.
so but just this is a great reminder. Everyone, I will have this recording and a full transcript of all this chat, so you could go back and look at it and reflect on it as
Yeah.
well. But some really great comments and
But I
participation.
will address the question about how you help your people uh, daughter agree on how you want to transition, or any part of your end of life planning, how you help them agree. And the answer is truly, there's no other answer except for start talking about it. Start talking about it early. And this question of values, like if they know that you want to do X because of your values, and your values are blah blah and blah, like it really opens them up to understanding where you're coming from. And for all the time you have left to live, it'll bring you closer together. So it's all about conversations. We have some great tools in our store that are free. A couple of them are not free, but none of them are expensive. And let me just tell you a little bit more about that. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit more about me, as I promised. So I founded Willow about 6 years ago with my dear friend Michelle Pante, and we've known each other for more than 20 years, but 6 years we came together because of our common passion to use end of life planning education as a tool for healing and for inspiration and for connection. So she was on a path to becoming a funeral director, and I had just wound up 11 years of a peace building project called Piece It Together, which brought Israeli and Palestinian and local youth together for an amazing program, but that ended. But if you want to know any more about me or Michelle, you can, once you go to the website, there's an about page and it's all there. So like many people in this kind of end of life support or education or planning realm, I felt, I was called to this work. And like probably a bunch of you, I've been touched by death, get to a certain age and we're all touched by death. And if you've been touched by death, you probably know that death or a close encounter, like death of someone else or a close encounter of death yourself, it can provide enormous opportunity for transformation. So it's usually a time of truth seeking and risk taking in a very good way. And when it's a time when people focus on either what has given their life meaning or what is giving their life meaning. But what's really cool about all this is that you don't have to wait until the death of somebody close to you or until you're faced with a life-threatening illness to experience these benefits. So that's why we created Willow. It's to help other mortal beings start thinking about and getting prepared for their inevitable death and dying in a way that's heart-centered and actually gets you to think about the life that you're living. So why is this important? Well, on a pragmatic level, the impacts of being unprepared can be devastating. They can be devastating for the deceased and they can be devastating for the people they leave behind. But here's the key for me. It's like, if you've never taken the time to consider how precious and finite your life is, you may never truly live. So I'm just going to repeat that one more time. If you've never taken the time to consider how precious and finite your life is, you may never truly live. So I invite you to put a yes in the chat box if you can relate to what I'm talking about here so far. Just put a yes in the chat box if that relates to you, just so I can know that you're listening. So I'm going to share another screen here. Hang on. Share. Okay. So Willow, end of life education and planning, that's what we're called. And what we do is we create tools and, oops, sorry, shoot, I can't move my mouse. And we create tools and opportunities to help people make the most of their precious and finite lives. And get, your stuff in order at the same time. Our approach is to use that someday, one day inevitable death, or we also call it the reality of immortality, as a portal for powerful living and a pathway to living and loving fully, whether you have days or decades left to live. So getting into action and completing these plans in this heart-centered and inquiry-based way, it's an opportunity to enrich and to energize and connect. And those three words we didn't make them up. Like, that's what people in our workshops would tell us how they felt afterwards. And then we just realized, okay, if that's how everyone feels, we're just going to keep repeating it. So in order to help you do that, that's why we offer right now this free program called 7 Tools for Making Sense of Life and Death. And here's a little more about that. So this is a course, I'll tell you, but I'll just go through it. So the topics we cover in the course are how and when to plan, end of life planning priorities, like helping you figure out what your end of life planning priorities are, core values, which of course you got a taste of today, and how they impact your living or dying, hopes and fears you got a taste of today, learning from the past, an exercise that gets you to reflect on past experiences with death and dying. There's some great questions that are called who and what matter most. There's like 5 different questions that are really foundational questions about everything. We have also have foundational questions about health and personal care priorities. So we're not going to get you to fill out a form during this program, but we're going to get you to think about what's important for you before you fill out a form. And the same thing with final wishes, meaning how you want to be cared for after you die. And then finally, how to move forward. So those are the topics covered, and it's mostly through video of Michelle and I walking you through slides and giving you examples and giving you time to pause and reflect yourself. It's got 11 videos and they're short, 5 to 20 minutes each. There's some resource sheets, try saying that fast, and additional tools. And then our workbook, which I showed you in a print version, the digital version comes with this program. So you could actually do this like an hour a day for 10 days. That's probably, it could take longer. It's a wonderful thing to do with someone, as I mentioned before. So that's what it is. It's the best way for you to get a taste of what we do. And, I'll just go back here for a second. And yeah, that's it. The way to get to it is go to our store or go to I don't know if Steve, you're putting that other link.
Yeah, I put that in earlier, and I will make sure that it's in chat. I'll make sure that it's in. I'll make sure it's on the link to the recording along with your contact information.
Okay,
And
great.
uh,
Oh, I
you
just
know,
want to mention is also that it's self-paced, right? It's online, so you do it whenever you want. It's not,
yep.
yeah. And again, you can do it with somebody or by yourself. It's up to you.
So I could anticipate this question coming from somebody in the audience. I'm glad Dixie brought it up. It says, "Can you discuss your fees for consultations and education programs?" Because
Ah,
a lot of the things that you are sharing with everybody is free. Um,
yes. So where do we make money?
where can we spend money with you, or
Sure.
what you
Great
know?
question. So there are three things in our shop that you can spend money on. One is a print version of this book, and I could, especially if you're in North America, we can mail it to you. Another is we have a lovely tool that's called 5 Steps for Successful End of Life Planning Conversations, which is a great tool. It's also not very expensive to help you start a conversation with someone who you just don't know how to start it with, and you're nervous. You don't know if they're gonna. So it's a great little tool. Those are the two like little things. Our main program is called the Willow EOL Educator program, and that's for people, maybe some of you, who are interested in actually teaching this stuff. And by teaching it, it could be doing a workshop. It also could mean doing some one-on-one coaching or with an individual or family. So there's information on our website about that. But I would suggest start doing this course and see if this speaks to you. And if it does, you'll probably get some emails about the other stuff. And then if you want to go to some more workshops like this, you go to our events page, and the licensed Willow EOL educators are providing all sorts of different events in different time zones. Most of them are in North America, Canada, and the US, but we have some in Australia and New Zealand, and even one in Japan. So that's how you can, and they charge different fees from like, actually, sometimes it's free, sometimes it's $10, sometimes it's $30. So it's all whatever they want to charge. And then finally, the same people, and myself included, if you're interested in some like one-on-one guidance, I suggest you just contact me and I'll explain how that works, because it's not yet obvious on our website, but there is a way there's somewhere I can direct you and tell you more about that. Because all of our EOL educators, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but many of them have that kind of service where they can work with individuals and families to help them get their stuff in order. And the great thing is that they use this heart-centered approach. So that it's not just, here's the form, fill it out. It's more like really getting to know what's important to you before you fill out anything.
Yeah, and
Hope that answers the
I
question.
see some of the names on our discussion that are providers that I could that are just you know would be ideal to be
Mhm.
an educator with your program. So that
Oh, that's great. That would be
yeah.
great. You know, I'm going to tell you about one more resource. This is a very brand new thing, and one of our educators started it. It's called Elder, ELDR, but I think it's called myelder.com. Let me just see if I can find it real quick. I think it's myelder.com. I forget what it is. No, that's not it. Okay.
My elder, placing your loved one's needs first.
Is it, do you want to, anyway, I'll go, yeah, did you find it? myelder.com? No, it was because I'm not finding it there.
Here,
Or
let
your,
me see.
your
Is
elder.
this is this
ELDR.
is this is
Oh,
this
yeah.
it?
No, that's not it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, stop here. All right. Well, if you send it to me, I'll send it
Yes,
out
I'll
to
send you.
everybody.
So it's a platform where you can find someone who will do this consultation for you. And it's most of the elders that are on, the providers that are on there, and I think there's like a dozen, all but 2 of them are Willow EOL educators. So if you are interested in becoming an educator, that's another way for you to get your
Oh,
business.
great.
So I'm just going to share this one last screen. Oops. I don't have to share it because it just has one line on it. But basically, what I'd like to say is that what we're doing here at Willow is we're changing the conversation around death and dying to include life and living. So I think that's where we're different from other people. Like everything, it's all interconnected, right? So it was a pleasure to be here today. And if you have
I
any
love
more
it. I
questions or
Yeah, no,
comments,
I feel like I've gained a new perspective, and you're right. I mean, if you have a conversation about life and living, you're actually also having a conversation about death and
exactly.
dying. Yeah.
It goes both
So
ways. Like we say,
yeah.
all that's important in the end, all that matters in the end matters now.
Hmm.
And all that matters now matters at the end. So another obvious value for some people is like environmental stewardship. And so
Yep.
we have a whole workshop all about greening your death, because there's so
Hmm.
many amazing things like happening all the time about how you can green your death. And if you live your whole life, being conscious of, how you treat the planet, and then you do something at death that's horrible for the planet. Like, probably because you just don't know
Yeah.
your,
Oh no.
your opportunities are. So that's just like
Well,
another
this
reason.
is great. Thanks. Perfect timing too. We're right at the top of the hour, and some great comments here. I will make sure to get Rena's contact information and the recording and the chat out to everybody. And Rena, let's definitely do this again.
I'd
I
love to.
think this was very thought provoking, and it's a great way for us all to go into the weekend.
Yeah, I'd love to do it
So
again. I have a whole bunch of other topics we can
I
do.
love it. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Thanks,
Nice.
everybody.
Nice to interact with you all. Have a great day.
Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.